can start off the session. So my name is Mercy Karumba. I'm the Senior Associate Community at the Global Schools Forum. It's great to have you on board today during this spotlight session as we showcase Learn to Play. So just to start us off, I'll take you through what we have in store for the next 1 hour and 15 minutes. So ideally, we'll start off with an icebreaker to help us settle in and breathe and just to learn even more about the mindful activities in store for us. And then I'll take 10 minutes to take us through what GSF is all about. That is the Global Schools Forum, who we are, where we operate, and in terms of our impact. And then Learn to Play, where the main hosts today will dive into the Mindful Way curriculum. And then Dwara Education will take us through the usability of the Mindful Way and what it means in action. And then we'll have a question and discussion session for 15 minutes. And afterwards, we'll wrap up for the last 5 minutes. But during this session, feel free to ask any question. Feel free to write that in the chat. Feel free to use your reaction button. Let us be as open and as reflective as we can during this session, and as open as well. So if you can have your camera on, that would be amazing to see your lovely faces. If you cannot, that's okay. And just to start us off, I'll hand over to Priyanka to take us through the settling in and the breathing session.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mercy. Thank you to GSF for being such a great partner and hosting the session. And thank you also to Dwara for being such a wonderful partner and joining us to share how the Mindful Way is going to be used in your context. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm going to get you standing right up because for us in Botswana, where I am based, it is 2 o'clock. And that means we have all just had lunch. And I think we need to stretch. So if we can start, please, by standing up. We are going to do a mindful play exercise from our curriculum, but it involves using our bodies and our breaths. So as Mercy indicated, if there's any of you that would like to switch on your cameras and join us in this participatory way as much as possible, please do. What we're going to do is just to get our bodies engaged and our brains engaged, we're going to do some breath work and some movement, and we are going to become rainbows. So I'm going to ask you to please put your arms out in front of you. And then as you breathe in, you're going to raise them up. So like this. And then as you breathe out, you're going to bend over and make an arc this way. Okay. So breathing in, come up. And breathing out, make an arc the other way. Breathing in, come up. And now as you breathe out, I'd like you to visualize yourself as the color red. Breathing out, make the red arc off the rainbow. Breathe in, send that red color all the way to the other side. It's a full rainbow. Breathing in, you're going to now visualize yourself as the color orange. Breathe out as you make yourself orange. Breathing in, come up. Breathe out and imagine yourself as yellow. Now you can maybe attach an emotion to it. If yellow was a feeling, what color would yellow be? Maybe some of you think of happiness or joy. Breathing out, stretch down, being that happiness and joy. See if that helps you touch the ground. When you're now being joyful, can you stretch a bit further? And last one, breathing out, pick any color off the rainbow. Breathe out to the side. Come back up. Breathe out to bring your arms back in front of you and down to your sides. And we can come back together. Thank you so much for doing some breath work and movement with us. I hope that got your bodies and your brains active for the session we're about to have.
Thank you, Priyanka. I think that got me quite active. It's quite chilly in Nairobi, so I think that was quite energetic for me. I don't know what other color people chose. I chose the yellow because that's what I'm wearing today. So it's good to have everyone on board, and thank you for participating. I hope the ones who had their camera off, you got to have a bit of that. So as we move along, I'd like to just share a bit about the Global Schools Forum, who we are, and what we do. So The Global Schools Forum is a collaborative community of 165 organizations spread across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And I'm sharing this because I understand we have organizations that are not part of GSF as part of this call. So I know some of you have had this already because you're part of GSF, but I'll be sharing this for those who are not. So our vision is basically just for all children, regardless of where they are, for them to access and realize their potential through safe access to quality education. And like I mentioned before, we are a community, basically of non-state organizations. And this includes schools, standalone schools, school networks, and education support organizations, basically working in low and middle income countries. And both Duara and Learn to Play are part of GSF. So it's good to have both organizations presenting today. So we are spread across Africa, Asia, and Latin America, like I mentioned, across 60 countries. And in terms of our spread, basically currently, and these numbers, like you may see, they are a representation of the organizations already in the community. So there were 23 million children, and the 1.37 million schools are basically the organizations, the schools, and the children that are being reached by the 165 organizations, as well as the 1.77 million teachers. So the community is quite large and growing day by day. And each time we're looking at how can we create opportunities where children thrive, whether at the ECD level, at the primary level, at the secondary level. And today we'll be discussing basically looking at the childcare space where Learn to Play works and what they're doing in terms of their mindful learning. And just to share a bit about Learn to Play, who are one of the organizations within the GSF community. So basically, 3 out of 4 children in Botswana actually have no access to early childhood education. And by 2050, it is suspected that 400 children will be at risk of poor social, emotional, and mental well-being. And just thinking about it, we know that's such a big number. And the risk of these children, one, not having the right playful spaces to play, and not just play spaces, but actually safe play spaces, and not looking at it from a physical aspect, but thinking about it in terms of their mental space as well. And that is what Learn to Play does. They seek to just change this reality by creating community-run play groups, parenting programs, and a unique approach called the Mindful Play. And what they'll be sharing today is actually the Mindful Way curriculum, which is a 15 minutes daily practice that helps children aged 3 to 6 build emotional awareness, resilience, self-regulation, and empathy. And what I came to know is that what we've done today, that activity is one of the activities within their Mindful Way curricula. So thank you, Priyanka, for taking us through that. I think I'm still trying to breathe after that session. So thank you for sharing that with us. And she'll be taking us through more and more activities in terms of, and very practical activities like you saw, that just bring children into this space of very good breath and emotional well-being. And this approach, both the Mindful Way as well as these other programs that they're running, they build a strong foundation for these children to just achieve lifelong learning and well-being at the playgroup level, at the playground level, but also within their communities and within the schools that they work with as well. And alongside that Mindful Way curricula, they also have the parent playbox. And I came to learn about this, and it was quite exciting just to see that they actually equip caregivers and the community with tools to nurture a responsive and playful home environment. So what they do is they'll create these playful boxes where they'll share them with the community, and the community is able to just learn how to use the resources and the tools in that box to just create this space for these children to learn within, especially in terms of academic level, but also use play in the midst of that. And the tools are designed not only practical tools, but also very cultural based. Like they have thought about what does Africa need? What is easily available within Africa and within the communities they work with. And with that, they've been able to create those play boxes. And I believe even the Mindful Way, which Priyanka will be sharing about, is very cognizant of the cultural aspect and the environments as well within the areas that they work. And they partnered with organizations in South Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. And Duara is one of the organizations in Kenya, will be sharing how they've been able to implement the Mindful Way curriculum. And I've mentioned a lot of the name Priyanka, so you'll be meeting her shortly once again. So Priyanka is the co-founder of Learn to Play, and she's been able to, through playful, through parenting programs and teacher training and the play groups experience that she has, she's been able to pioneer these early learning models that integrate well-being and social-emotional learning within governments and organizations and the community at large. She's a social entrepreneur, a children's author, and an advocate for play-based learning. She's actually very passionate and enthusiastic about play within the learning environments. And under her leadership, Learn to Play innovative approaches have been showcased on international platforms for their impact, from parenting outreach play groups that uplift women and children alike, and a globally recognized early learning program called the Mindful Way, which will be our focus today. She's also a mother of 2 wonderful children, and she's looking forward to basically transform the power of play and what play means in learning spaces as well as the community. So Priyanka, welcome. We are looking forward to hear from you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you again to everybody who is here. I am just about to share my screen, and I just want to make sure, I can't see anyone else now, but I just want to make sure you can see the screen. So if someone can just shout out and say yes or no.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So we've shared a little bit about Learn to Play and myself. So just to say thank you to GSF for hosting. Thank you to Dwara as one of our key partners in the Mindful Way for being willing to showcase and share your experience. And thank you everyone for being here. So just to very briefly recap, this slide just demonstrates what Learn to Play's model is. We have children at the top of our model. That is who we are serving. And our mission is to weave mindful play into the fabric of African early learning. We do this through 3 different programs. One is our play groups, where we train mothers or educators to lead these early learning spaces in their communities. The other is the Mindful Way, which can be integrated into any educational setting. We use it at our play groups, but we also train parents and caregivers at home to run the parent play box in their home setting, incorporating a lot of mindfulness and social emotional learning at home as well. But really, I think, just to delve into the topic of today, which is the Mindful Way program, I think for us, when we look at why mindful play, I know that we've already shared some of these statistics in the beginning. Thank you, Mercy, for doing that. But across Africa, 36 million children are living in poverty, and that poverty is multidimensional. And some of those aspects of poverty are invisible. They're things that you can't see, or something that, if you saw somebody, you wouldn't know that looks like poverty to you. But one of the invisible symptoms of poverty is the lack of positive mental health. And across our continent, it's a huge challenge that we're facing. UNICEF did a whole thing on trying to cost out what this would look like. And I can't even fathom this number, but it cost the continent $30 billion in lost productivity. So that is how much lost earnings, lost productivity to economies, lost, people being a part of society and the economy. And I think that is a massive loss to a continent that is already struggling with other very diverse and serious challenges on a daily basis. And in contrast to that, where we think there's a solution, is studies show that daily mindfulness activities are actually proven to reduce anxiety and stress up to 35% for children even as young as age 3. And that's really powerful when we think that that's the potential that we now have to change the statistic. If I think specifically about Botswana, the country where I live and where I'm from, it's Botswana, we might have this impression of it being the fastest growing economy in Africa, or, something that's really famous for diamonds and the Okavango Delta. But the realities behind that facade are that Botswana is one of the most unhappy countries in the world. It comes 6th in the world happiness or unhappiness rankings, rather, followed by countries like Afghanistan and the DRC and places where there's war, and then Botswana. And it just doesn't make sense of why that's the case in Botswana. We also have one of the highest youth suicide rates. And so for us with the Mindful Way, that was really important for us to integrate into our programs. And later in the presentation, I'll kind of show you when we did impact assessments of our children and their learning milestones and their social emotional development, a couple of years ago, we were really disheartened by the results. And then I'll show you what the results are last year after we incorporated the Mindful Way, which is really positive for us. But it's one of those things that when we think about youth suicide and unhappiness, that we realize that, you know, whilst, yes, young teenagers of today need support and intervention, for me, that's a Band-Aid. That is supporting them once they've already experienced trauma and stress and anxiety, and they're already contemplating suicide. But the real change is, how do we strengthen children right from when their brains are forming in the first 5 years of life to become as resilient and build in the tools for coping with life's challenges. We may not be able to remove all of life's challenges, but what the Mindful Way does is it gives children the tools and coping mechanisms to have the resilience and emotional strength to cope with the challenges that they are going to face. So what is the Mindful Way? The Mindful Way is a curriculum. It is actually Africa's first Mindful Way curriculum with daily 15-minute social and emotional activities for children aged 3 to 6. It is mapped to international tools. So it's mapped to UNICEF's ECDI 2030 tools, specifically to their social emotional learning competencies. It's also mapped to LEGO's Learning Through Play's holistic skills. And more recently, we have mapped it to the Royal Foundation Shaping Us framework for social emotional learning that has just come out of the UK. So that means that all our competencies or the outcomes we're working towards in each lesson plan, and I'll take you through some of the lesson plans shortly, are actually mapped to these competencies. So they're not designed to meet any specific country's curriculum. So they're not mapped to Botswana's national curriculum or Kenya's national curriculum, but rather to a more globalized standards of social emotional learning. So for children aged 3 to 6, what are the overarching competencies in social emotional learning that we'd like them to be able to start practicing and meeting by the time they are going into more formal primary school learning? The Mindful Way has 180 lesson plans, so it's 1 year of content with daily activities, and they follow typical preschool themes. I've just put some examples here. So they follow things like animals or my body, all about me, nature, things to do with different emotions, conservation and shapes and colors and opposites, and very normal, typical preschool themes that you might find in an early learning setting that teachers have to teach. And what we found is very often our educators can come up with ideas and lesson plans around the literacy aspects of how to teach all about me, or the vocabulary, or the numeracy, the cognitive side of it. But to then incorporate social emotional learning into something like opposites becomes very challenging, or social emotional learning activities into a theme like shapes or colors or numbers. Across multiple different types of settings. So here is an example of a lesson plan. So this is actually a screenshot of what a page in our curriculum looks like. So what you can see is here is the theme that it is about. So it's all about me. It's the name of the activity with some instructions. It's got the social emotional learning competency. So by doing this activity, what competencies or what outcomes are you helping children practice? So for this one in particular, it's about building self-esteem, but also helping children to regulate their emotions, their energy, and their behavior. And then it's got what materials are required. And for this particular activity, there are no materials required. And whilst that's not the case for all of the activities, community-led playgroups. So these are in some of the most marginalized and rural parts of our country, in a refugee camp in Botswana, in indigenous, marginalized communities as well. So our resources are really either resource simple, things that can be easily found in the local environment, or if there are things that need to be purchased and bought, they're things that are easily available even in low resource settings. But majority of the time, the lesson plans actually have very simple to no materials. So as you can see, this one is easy to follow. It's, shows the educator what yoga poses the child needs to do, and it gives some simple instructions for what the educator can say out loud to the child to guide them to get into the correct yoga pose, and then to say the affirmation alongside it to build their self-esteem. So this is just one example of the 180 lesson plans in the curriculum. Here we have another one, but this time, instead of just looking at it, I'm going to ask us to actually do it together. So this one is called a wiggly body scan. And for those of us who have experienced yoga or meditation, you might have experienced doing a body scan. It's usually at the end of your yoga session. Your yoga teacher might guide you into a shavasana or a resting pose and ask you to do a scan of your body from toes to your head or head to your toes, just to notice how your body's feeling in different ways. What we really understand is that it's very hard for children to sit still. And mindfulness in its original form can be very static and can be very much reliant on children or adults being still. What we've done is we've incorporated play into common mindfulness practices. So you saw the yoga poses with affirmation and movement and joy and sound. And it's the same with meditations, with visualizations, with gratitude. We try and bring an element of play into it. So for a children's body scan, we've made it wiggly, which means children are allowed to use movement. They don't need to sit still or lie down still for 5 minutes doing a body scan, which would be very difficult for a 3-year-old to do. So we're going to try the wiggly body scan. So you don't need to stand, and obviously we can't form a circle, but I'm just going to ask you to, while you're sitting down, just shake and wiggle your body, stretch it out a little bit, and think to yourself, how are you currently feeling? Start noticing how your head is feeling. Maybe tilt it from side to side, or tilt it back, tilt it forward and have your chin come to your chest. And just notice if your head is feeling light. Is it feeling heavier today than normal? Maybe as you're doing those rotations, just take some deep breaths in. You can do some shoulder shrugs, rolling your shoulders backwards, rolling your shoulders forwards, lifting them up to your ears, and then dropping them out with a big sigh. Doing it one more time, lifting it up as you breathe in to your ears, dropping them down with a big sigh. And just seeing how that changes how your neck and head is feeling. After that, maybe you want to stretch your arms out, interlacing your fingers, stretch your arms up to the side. Can you put your hands under your chair? And just see how your arms are feeling. Maybe you want to twist your body in your seat, looking back, twist your body to the other side, looking back, and noticing any tension in your torso, in your stomach, in your waist, in your hips. Then underneath your table, stretch out one leg, kick it out a little bit, stretch out the other leg, kick it out a little bit. Maybe rotate your ankle. And after doing all of this, place your hands on your heart and see if you can notice your heartbeat. Has it quickened at all? Did it go a bit faster after doing all of that activity? Now maybe take a slow, long, deep breath in, keeping your hands on your heart. And breathe out. Another deep breath in. Breathe out. And one more, breathing in. And sigh it out. And just notice if after those 3 long breaths, if that changed your heart rate. Did you notice that it started going a bit slower? And again, this is just another activity from our curriculum that encourages self-regulation, body awareness, and doesn't require any materials. So it's easy to integrate into playgroups or classroom settings, and it can be done at various different points of the day. So this activity, or many of our activities, can be done at circle time as children come into the school classroom, from home. We also don't always know the challenges that children have faced at home. So when they come into the school environment, perhaps school or your classroom is the safest place that they have. And they've gone through whatever challenges they've gone through at home that morning, or getting to school, what that journey has been like. And so having activities and tools at our disposal as educators or as organizations to help children settle into a space and leave whatever challenges or troubles they've had behind them to bring their focus and unite them into the classroom. That's also what we're trying to achieve with our Mindful Way activities. The activities can also be used as transitions. You could have children who go out to break time, and as they come back into your class and they've now got to get on with their maths work or their English lesson or their geography lesson, and you need them to self-regulate and bring their attention back after all the chaos or a fight on the playground, or they fell down and scraped their knee. This is another way to help regulate their behavior and their emotions after break time when they're coming back into your classroom. And it takes 5 minutes, as you just experienced, or 10 minutes if you're doing it with a big group of kids. And then they're regulated and ready to pay attention and learn whatever lesson you've got for them. So this, again, like I said, is just another on our children's learning outcomes across 6 key developmental areas every year. So we measure literacy and numeracy, along with creativity and imagination, fine motor skills and gross motor skills. But we also measure children's social and emotional learning. And at the end of 2023, we found that only 30% of children were meeting their social emotional learning milestones at our playgroups, at our Learn to Play playgroups in Botswana. And this was a really worrying statistic for us. We just didn't want that to be the case. Our priority is happy children who are ready to learn. And if that is our priority, we really needed to focus on that. So actually at the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024, we worked on developing the Mindful Way curriculum for our educators at our playgroups to implement. We did a whole new training for them. They all got trained in the Mindful Way program. And they started implementing the Mindful Way curriculum in their playgroups. And this is across 8 districts with over 800 children in Botswana. And we did our assessments again at the end of 2024. So in November. Such a big jump, but there was a 62% increase in children who met their social emotional learning milestones between one year and the other. And the only change we had made was the integration of the Mindful Way curriculum. And I think that's what's gotten us really excited about it, and also why we're so excited to be able to share this with all of you today as well, is because we really think it's such a simple an easy to integrate program that it's a game changer for children's happiness and how they can then cope with school and all of the rest of the demands that they have. We've now trained, obviously not just Duara, who's going to share their experience with you today, but we've trained an organization in Uganda and in Tanzania as well. The organization we trained in Uganda also shared that training because it's a training of trainers. So it's a TOT program. And because we trained them in Uganda, they have programs all over the world. So they've got programs in Bangladesh, in India, in Ukraine, in many, many different countries. So they took that training and they started training their educators in other countries. And they started using it with Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh as well. And this was one of the testimonials from one of the children. And while we designed the program for children aged 3 to 6, they've actually started using the breathwork activities even with children in primary school. So children age 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old in Bangladesh, just given the context of where they're coming from and what they're going through. And one of the young children that they did this with in Bangladesh shared that after the breathing activities, they felt that they forgot all the troubles in their mind, and they felt much more calm and much more centered. A parent in Botswana shared that, thanks to the yoga exercises and the mindfulness, her daughter has gone from shy and timid to feeling confident and, able to express herself. We often do joint parent and child sessions, and parents are demanding more and more of those as well. They want to do more joint mindful play sessions with their children. And our mamas report to us, our educators at our playgroups, they report to us that after doing the mindful way, they find children are kinder to one another and calmer at playgroup. And I think, as an educator, that's what you really want to focus on. You want to focus on building those social relationships and on being able to focus on the teaching side and less on the behavior management side of things. So just to bring it to kind of what we've done for our partner organizations, and Dwara will share a bit more, but also what we're offering to other organizations, especially within the GSF network, is an invitation to take this mindful way into your organization. Our goal as Learn to Play is to share this as far and wide as possible. What we can offer is a 2-day, it's an in-person training. It's not an online training. And that's because it is extremely experiential. It's very, very practical. You're playing and practicing the games and activities from the curriculum the whole time. But it's a 2-day TOT model that will equip your team, so your organization, with the knowledge and confidence to then work with your educators in your settings and train them to implement the Mindful Way curriculum. At the end of that training, you gain access to our full curriculum, and that is then yours to keep. We also give you ongoing support to ensure success and contextualization into your communities and your organization. And we also offer M&E tools to assess the impact of the Mindful Way in your context and your setting. So I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to hand over to our incredible partner, Dwara, who trusted us very early on in this process last year when we didn't even have these results to share. So again, just a huge thank you to Dwara, and just, they're going to share a little bit about their experience on how they've been working with Learn to Play to incorporate the Mindful Way into their context. And then I'll come back and we can do a question and answer session together.
Great. Thank you, Priyanka. And thanks for that exercise. I definitely feel more calm and in my body after that. Hi, everyone. My name is Shayur. I'm the learning lead at Dwara. And allow me just to present my screen, and so that I can share a little bit about how we at Dwara have been using the Mindful Way. So yeah, we are Dwara. We're based in Kenya. And I'll start just sharing a small bit about us so that you have a little bit of context. Our vision is to make high quality education accessible. And we're doing that by, our purpose is to create these thriving communities. We have thriving children, and we're transforming these communities, these children, these families through accessible, high quality education. And how do we do that? So we work with female teachers, and we turn them into entrepreneurs of their own community-based micro schools in underserved communities. So an example is we take these female teachers like Flora in a neighborhood of Nairobi called Gathiga, and she has a dream of starting a school, being a school owner. And she's a passionate, wonderful educator. And she has this dream, and we partner with her to set up the school. And we help her, we empower her with training, with the curriculum, and all the different types of tools and systems that she would need to run a school. And once we give them that training, we help them launch and operate their own micro school. So they're literally offering, like, they're fulfilling their dream to offer high quality education in their communities. And that way they're transforming their children's lives, but also the lives of their communities. And we're micro schools, so we keep them small. This allows, like, for a higher teacher to student ratio. And currently our students are in playgroup to grade 2. So that's roughly ages 3 to 7. We've been running for a year now, and we have 4 schools that we are working with at the moment. So 4 different school entrepreneurs. And let me go to the next slide. So these are just some pictures to give you a sort of visual of what a Duara school is like. We're working with a national curriculum, but we have a holistic view of child development. So while we do focus on the foundational learning, such as literacy and numeracy, we also want to nurture the children as whole human beings. So we're thinking about what are the future skills that they need to thrive in this day and age? What are the values and mindsets that they need, and habits of mind? And so very key to this is the mindfulness and social emotional learning component. And so we do give emphasis to that. And yeah, just taking you through. So these are just some images you see of what a Duara space looks like. And because mindfulness is such a big part of, and social emotional learning is something that we really want to, like, nurture in our learners and our communities. When this opportunity came to work with Learn to Play and their Mindful Way curriculum, there was a natural alignment. So we already have been incorporating mindful activities at the start of our day. And the thing that happens is that we have a learning team that creates the curriculum, but in partnering with Learn to Play and the Mindful Way curriculum, what it's helped us with is give us ready-made mindfulness and social emotional learning activities. And that just makes it easier to incorporate them into our day. And these daily practices that are happening consistently, we're starting to see, like, changes in our children and the way that they're learning to regulate their emotions. And the way that Mindful Way has helped us is categorize them into themes. Priyanka was referring to that. So these are common themes that we use already in our curriculum, like jobs in my community, all about me, colors, shapes, opposites, nature. And this helps us match these activities with the themes that we're already doing. But what we also wanted was, we worked with the Learn to Play team to not just be aligned with different themes, but we realized that there are other times in the day that we would like to incorporate mindfulness. So sort of different uses for these mindfulness activities. So to be more classroom centric. And in the different scenarios that a teacher may want to help their children calm down or regulate their emotions or just be aware of what's happening inside. So we worked in a collaborative way with the Learn to Play team, and then also categorized them into these, what you're seeing here, as different uses that we could use. And I'll show you some examples in a moment. But there's the morning circle time. Then at different times of the day when emotions are really big, children are having, like, doing activities where their energies are high and emotions are big. So then we have different strategies for calming down. Or when we're transitioning from outdoors to indoors or from one activity to the next, and we just want to create a bit of focus, then we have activities that can be used for that. So it's really helpful for these sort of plug and play different scenarios. And the way that we've been using it, is we have circle time in the morning. That's a common thing in most schools. but it's a time for our community to gather and doing a grounding activity to talk about ourselves. And at that time we can tie in. So here's an example of photos of different circle time activities. And now I'm sharing sort of a screenshot of one of our like curriculum decks that our teachers follow. And this is an activity that's a grounding activity from the Mindful Way, where our theme was about community helpers. And so the Mindful Way already has these themes. And this was an activity that we can just easily plug in to circle time, which is related to community helpers. And it ties in nicely with the activity that they do later in the morning. So Priyanka took us through the way that activity is structured. But here's another example of one of those. And then this would be an activity that they would do after that, which is what's my job. So it just seamlessly just works with that. But then we also have activities that can be used at any other time of the day, sort of like a plug and play, easy for a teacher. Because sometimes when you're in the moment and you just want children to calm down, you want something just to like be a little guide, a manual, a little tool that you can use. So something like this is something they could pull out, which is taking different shapes and then using your breath and your fingers to like move around the shapes and breathe in and out, and then just help create that sense of focus. Here's another one that is related to feelings, and it's been really helpful to have activities like this, because we've noticed that children are, when we're doing them consistently, we're noticing that children are using them even without us like actually leading it. So sometimes a child may feel like their energy is all over the place, or they're feeling a little anxious, and they pause and they do their own, like closing their eyes and breathing and calming down. And yeah, it's been effective to see how this is just seeping into their consciousness and their way of being, and how they learn to regulate themselves. So it can be both teacher-led, but once the children do it regularly, they're starting to use these tools for themselves. And so these are the different ways that we have used them at Dwara. And for this, we did have, as Priyanka said, it's an in-person training. So I'd like to just invite Victoria, our our founder and CEO, to share a little bit about the training that we did with the with Learn to Play on the Mindful Way.
Thank you so much, Shio. Thank you, Priyanka and Mercy, for all of this. Yeah, just taking a small minute to just share how beautiful and powerful the training was that the Learn to Play team did with us on the Mindful Way. We spent, those in-person days together as a team, and it was really an amazing experience for all of us, because it was fully immersive and very experiential, as you already saw with Priyanka guiding us through 2 activities today. And I think that was not only a great team building activity for all of us, and just literally a grounding, and also connecting with ourselves and with each other in a very beautiful and emotional connecting way, but also really was a very insightful and important experience for us to see the power and experience the power and the importance of mindfulness, both obviously for ourselves as well as in our schools. And so we all left with, a very deepened understanding of the importance of mindfulness especially around social emotional learning, and all of us being sort of educators and deep in the everyday. I think it was incredibly helpful to also then just learn from each other and reflect on those experiences from each other, and sort of collectively grow as a team and as a joint team with a Learn to Play team together. So I can, from my heart, just recommend, and I'm just so grateful for the incredible training time that we had, that brought us together as a team and really allowed us to move on from there. doing a lot of experiences ourselves, like the weather report or 5-finger breathing or the emotion soup that you can see here, which we plan to also continuously integrate into our just normal team building activities. Thank you, and back to you, Priyanka.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Victoria and Shayur. I really appreciate you guys sharing your experience and just being such amazing partners with us on this journey and learning with us, but also sharing your feedback and your experiences so that we can improve the Mindful Way curriculum for ourselves, for you, and for any other partners that come along the way as well. And I think, just really as Learn to Play, that is, I think, part of our kind of core is that we are a learning organization ourselves. So at no point are we, saying that this curriculum that we have is full, fixed, and final. 100% always learning and improving what we have on offer, wanting to contextualize it further, wanting to do better for our partners, but particularly for the families and children that you all serve as well. And I think that's really our ultimate goal. So just to kind of take you back to the last few bits. I think just because it's hard for me to not end on another mindful note, we do a lot of reflections in our Mindful Way curriculum as well. So just for ourselves that are here and part of this call, just to think of, we do a pebble meditation that's inspired by the kind of the Buddhist meditations. But here I'm going to ask you to imagine that you are holding a smooth pebble, and that pebble represents hope for you, for your organization, for the children and families you serve. And just take a moment to think about what hope do you carry for children in your community? And why do you do what you do? What is that hope that drives you every day? And if you can just take a minute, maybe even closing your palm with that pebble in there, imagining it, feeling it soft and smooth, grounding yourself in that moment, and really holding on to that hope, because that's what keeps us going. And once you're really clear on what that is, sharing a word or a phrase in the chat on what hope you carry for the families you serve. And I'll just give you a minute to think about that. And I can't see the chat yet, so only when I stop sharing will I be able to see your responses, but I'm looking forward to them very much. And then just to bring us back to now an open discussion with all of you, just to think about us sharing, both Dwara, myself, and GSF, what, if at all, has resonated with you for your organizations, the programs you run, the children and families you serve. Is there anything that resonates? Is there anything you still have questions about? But also thinking about how might Learn to Play or the Mindful Way support you in your context. I think the only thing that I didn't mention earlier, which I want to, and is that the Mindful Way, not only have we mapped it to those frameworks that I mentioned, the UNICEF ECDI 2030, the Lego Holistic Skills, and the Royal Foundation Shaping Us, but we actually submitted it for review to 100, the kind of global education organization based in Finland.
Shayur, I'm not sure if Priyanka's internet is faulty.
Yeah, it seems like she's frozen.
Okay.
I think she
It's actually left. All right, I think I'll
Maybe
just
she's-
do like a conclusion and then when she joins back, she can finish off from where she left from. So I'm so grateful for everyone joining today and for Learn to Play. I'm sure we all feel connected and a bit relaxed as well from this session, from that mindful session. And it was just nice to also see from Dwara's side in terms of this mindful activity in a classroom setup and what this looks like in terms of them incorporating this within their class and within their lesson plans as well. So I think Priyanka is almost back. And I think as she speaks, maybe I can just launch a poll also just to collect feedback from you in terms of how this session was helpful for you. Do you feel like it's a session that you will actually implement in terms of what you learned today in terms of your workplace? And what else can we just use to ensure that we make these programs and these sessions a bit better? So I think we can be filling in the poll as Priyanka just continues with what she was saying. Sorry, Priyanka, you were cut off.
I'm so
thank-
sorry.
It's
My
okay.
internet is not great. I'm actually in one of our remote playgroup locations today. So the internet is not always very stable. And I don't know where I got cut off, but I don't know, Mercy, maybe you can just guide me and just tell me where I was.
So you are in your second slide.
Okay,
Yeah,
so just the questions.
yeah,
I'll put that back
questions,
up. And I think really what I'm not sure if you heard this part, but what I was saying that I forgot to say at the introduction was that in addition to being mapped to those various international frameworks with UNICEF, LEGO, and the Royal Foundation, the Mindful Way, we actually submitted it for review to 100, this global education organization in Finland last year. They were doing a spotlight on well-being in schools in partnership with the International Baccalaureate, the IB. And together with a board of, I think, over 90 experts globally, including those from the IB, from 100, from the University of Oxford's Wellbeing Center and Harvard University Center for Flourishing Lives, Learn to Play was actually selected, the Mindful Way in particular, was selected as one of the 15 most scalable and impactful innovations for well-being from all around the world. And so I think, you know, that we really do want this to be an internationally used program. We designed it initially to serve the response that we saw in our programs, as I showed you, that only 30% of our children were meeting their social emotional learning milestones, and we needed a serious intervention for our own program, and the Mindful Way was it. And then we had fabulous partners like Dwara saying, we trust you, we'll take it on, before we even got our impact results. But then we were able to share it with others, and here have been some of the experiences and outcomes from that. So I think, you know, I had asked about your Pebble of Hope, and I missed some of the responses in the chat, but I do hope we can engage in a little bit of a discussion. And the rest was just to get, you know, some questions, if you've got any questions or comments about what resonated with you, any questions about the program, and how might you think the Mindful Way or Learn to Play be able to support children and families in your organization and context where you work. So I'll leave it there. And I know Mercy's got the poll out and some of her other things. So thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. Don't worry about the internet. I totally understand about that. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We hope that this session was quite helpful. And I think we have like 2 questions that had been asked already. Maybe you can respond to those. And then, so there was one from, I think there was one from Sham. How did this mindful play come? What goes in the background when you're thinking about it? And then there's one more question that has come up from Nelias. What will be the cost implication for an organization looking to implement this?
Perfect, thank you. I think just to answer the first one about kind of how did it come about, it's really rooted in principles of neuroscience and child development. So that's the main thing. We've also taken the competencies, as I mentioned, from these various frameworks, and then tried to plan activities and lessons that are age appropriate and play based, but that are meeting those competencies. So things like empathy or social skills, problem solving, communication, emotion awareness, self-regulation. So those kinds of competencies, and then try to create activities to meet those global competencies activities that are scientifically, and child developmentally appropriate from a mindfulness perspective. So that's, I hope that answers that first question about what is the foundation maybe on what this is based on. And then the cost implications for an organization, it would really depend per organization in terms of how many trainers and how many teachers this is going to be used with. So we're happy to take individual inquiries from that, but just as an overview of what costs it would be, that obviously it's an in-person training. So depending on where this is going to be, it would be our flights over. So it's usually 2 trainers, myself and my co-founder Ishwar, to carry out the training. So it's our flights over to the location for where this training is going to be held, I assume in your context. And then depending on how many trainers and so on, we'd be able to create a more tailored quotation. And then obviously accommodation and in-country costs for that. We try to keep it as accessible and affordable to organizations. We understand that organizations implementing this are nonprofits usually as well, just like ourselves, and don't always have budgets to be able to run new programs. So we don't charge a license fee or any curriculum fee for the program. It's just a once-off training fee. Once you've received the training, you have a lifetime royalty-free license to use the curriculum. And if we make updates to that curriculum, we will always send you those updates. You don't need to pay additionally for any updated versions of the program or any improved versions of the program. And we still work with your organization for a year after the training to ensure success for that period. So to make sure that yourselves and your team are really confident to roll the program out. And I think, just in the case of Duara specifically in Kenya, actually in Kenya, the costs were just flying us out really, and the training, but accommodation and stuff was kind of covered. We luckily have family and friends in Kenya that we can stay with. So, those kinds of things, we try and make that as accessible as possible for organizations. So where we can void costs, we absolutely would do that and take that into account for implementing organizations. I see the other question about the global standards. So I will type it out in chat, but we have mapped it to the UNICEF ECDI 2030 tool. So that's an early childhood index. So it's got milestones in that index or competencies that children should be meeting for school readiness across key developmental domains: literacy, physical development, numeracy, and social emotional learning. So we've mapped the framework, the mindful way to the social and emotional learning competencies in the UNICEF ECDI 2030 index. The other is the Lego Learning Through Play skills. And they've got a section, again, specifically on social and emotional learning skills and their holistic skills development. And they've got like competencies and frameworks that they recommend from a learning through play perspective that children should be meeting. And then the last one is the Royal Foundation, which is William and Kate, the Prince and Princess of Wales. They've got a foundation for early childhood education set up in the UK, and they have recently launched a framework called the Shaping Us framework. And that's a framework, again, of social and emotional learning competencies that other curriculums can map towards that framework. And so we've mapped our curriculum to that as well. So I hope that answers your question. And then I will also drop in the chat the link to the 100 well-being report so that you can see how Learn to Play was selected in that, or the mindful way specifically. And thank you so much to the rest of you for sharing your comments. Thank you, Tegan. Thank you, Babita. Thank you, Sham, as well. Thank you, Nelius. I appreciate it. But if there's more questions or any other comments, I'm happy that we said we'd be here till 3:15. So I'm also happy to open up, and feel free to unmute. We're a small enough group, and chat. And if I'm going to speak on behalf of Duara, but if you've got questions for Duara as an implementing partner, please don't hesitate to ask them. It doesn't have to be all from me as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Priyanka. And very good questions coming through. Thank you so much. I've put in Priyanka's email on the chat as well, and my email. So if you have any questions, please reach out on email. But as Priyanka said, we'll be on the call for the next 15 minutes. So if you'd like to stay behind and ask any specific questions, we are happy to respond to that. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for being so engaging, actually, in terms of your questions, and we hope you participated in the mindful activities that we did as well, and you're feeling much better. So have yourselves a wonderful day and evening ahead.